What if I told you the biggest robbery in human history wasn't committed with guns? It wasn't a bank heist. It wasn't a cyber attack. It was carried out by a smiling grandfather in an expensive suit. For 17 years, he stole $65 billion from thousands of victims while the world's smartest investors applauded him. Banks trusted him. Governments trusted him. Billionaires trusted him. Then one quiet night, his own sons made a single phone call that brought the entire empire crashing down. This is the unbelievable true story of Bernie Madoff, the greatest con artist the world has ever known. This is the story of Bernie Madoff, the man who ran the greatest scam in human history, and how his own sons were the ones who finally ended it. To understand how Bernie Madoff pulled this off, you first need to understand who he was. Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born in 1938 in Queens, New York. He was not born rich. He was not born connected. He was just a smart, ambitious young man who wanted to succeed in finance. In 1960, at just 22 years old, Bernie started his own investment firm with $5,000 he had saved from working as a lifeguard and sprinkler installer. $5,000. That firm eventually became Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, one of the most powerful and respected investment firms on Wall Street. Bernie became so respected and so trusted that he was eventually elected chairman of the NASDAQ stock exchange, one of the most prestigious positions in American finance. He had a perfect reputation, a perfect record, a perfect life, and he was using all of it to run the biggest lie in financial history. Here is how the scam worked. Wealthy clients came to Bernie wanting to invest their money. Bernie promised them something nobody else on Wall Street could promise: steady, guaranteed returns of 10 to 12% every single year. No matter what the market did, no crashes, no losses, just consistent, reliable growth. Every other investor on Wall Street had good years and bad years. Markets go up and markets go down. That is just how investing works. But not Bernie. Bernie always went up. And that consistency was exactly what made people trust him completely. What clients did not know was that Bernie was not investing their money at all. He was simply taking money from new clients and using it to pay returns to existing clients. No investments, no stocks, no trades, just moving money from one pocket to another and sending out fake account statements every month showing incredible returns. This is called a Ponzi scheme, named after Charles Ponzi, who ran a similar but much smaller version in the 1920s. Bernie's version was on a scale the world had never seen before. For 17 years, Bernie Madoff maintained this lie perfectly. His offices were split across 2 floors of a Manhattan skyscraper. The legitimate trading business operated on one floor. The fraud operated on another floor that most employees never visited. He employed a small, dedicated team to fabricate account statements, create fake trading records, and generate false documents that looked completely real. Every month, thousands of clients received statements showing their money was growing steadily. Celebrities, charities, universities, pension funds, hedge funds, international banks. Some of the wealthiest and most sophisticated investors in the world trusted Bernie Madoff with everything they had. Steven Spielberg's charitable foundation invested with Bernie. Elie Wiesel's Foundation for Holocaust Survivors invested with Bernie. Major European banks invested with Bernie. Thousands of ordinary retired people invested their entire life savings with Bernie. Because Bernie always delivered, every single year, without fail. There was one man who knew something was wrong. His name was Harry Markopolos, a financial analyst from Boston. In 2000, 8 years before the scam collapsed, Harry was asked by his employer to figure out how Bernie Madoff was generating such consistent returns so they could copy the strategy. Harry sat down with the numbers. He ran the calculations. He checked them again. And within 4 hours, he concluded that what Bernie was claiming to do was mathematically impossible. The returns Bernie was showing simply could not be achieved through legitimate trading. The numbers did not add up. The strategy Bernie claimed to use could not produce these results even in perfect market conditions. Harry Markopolos went to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the government body responsible for regulating financial markets, and told them Bernie Madoff was running a fraud. They ignore him. He went back in 2001. They ignored him again. He went back in 2005 with a detailed 29-page report titled "The World's Largest Hedge Fund is a Fraud," laying out exactly how Bernie was running the scheme. They investigated briefly and found nothing wrong. Harry Markopolos spent 8 years trying to warn the world about Bernie Madoff. Nobody listened. What finally brought Bernie Madoff down was not a government investigation. It was not a smart analyst. It was not a whistleblower from inside his company. It was the 2008 financial crisis. When the global financial markets collapsed in 2008, investors around the world panicked. They needed their money back. Hedge funds, banks, and individual investors all rushed to withdraw their investments from everywhere, including from Bernie Madoff. In the space of a few weeks, Bernie received withdrawal requests totaling $7 billion. He only had $300 million in the bank. For the first time in 17 years, the money coming in was not enough to cover the money going out. The scheme was collapsing. Bernie knew it was over. On December 9th, 2008, Bernie Madoff called his 2 sons into his apartment. Mark and Andrew Madoff both worked at their father's firm in the legitimate trading division. Bernie sat them down and told them everything. The investment advisory business was all a lie. There were no investments. There was no money. It was one big Ponzi scheme. He had been running it for years. It was over. His son sat in silence. Then they left the apartment. They called a lawyer. And the next morning they called the FBI and turned their own father in. On December 11th, 2008 FBI agents arrested Bernie Madoff at his Manhattan penthouse apartment. When they asked him if there was an innocent explanation for what had happened, he said no. There is no innocent explanation. What investigators uncovered over the following months was almost impossible to comprehend. $65 billion stolen over 17 years from approximately 37,000 victims across 136 countries. Charities that had trusted Bernie with their entire endowments were wiped out completely. The Foundation for Holocaust Survivors, run by Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel, lost $15.2 million. Everything they had. Thousands of retired people who had invested their life savings lost everything. People in their 70s and 80s who had worked their entire lives suddenly had nothing left. Some victims took their own lives. Others lost their homes, their retirement funds, their entire financial security in a single moment. Bernie Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal crimes, including securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and perjury. On June 29, 2009, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. As the sentence was read out in court, victims in the gallery wept and applauded. Bernie was 71 years old. He would never leave prison. His son, Mark Madoff, never recovered from the shame of what his father had done. On December 11, 2010, exactly 2 years to the day after turning his father into the FBI, Mark Madoff took his own life. He was 46 years old. Bernie Madoff died in prison on April 14, 2021. He was 82 years old. So, how did one man fool the entire world for 17 years? He built trust slowly over decades before the fraud even began. He used his reputation as a former NASDAQ chairman as a shield. He kept returns consistent and believable rather than outrageously high. He created an air of exclusivity, making clients feel lucky to invest with him. And he surrounded himself with the appearance of complete legitimacy. The greatest weapon Bernie Madoff had was not intelligence. It was not technology. It was not connections. It was the fact that people trusted him completely. And trust, once given to the wrong person, can cost you everything. That is the story of Bernie Madoff, the man who stole $65 billion, fooled the entire world for 17 years, and was finally brought down not by investigators or analysts or governments, but by his own sons sitting across from him at a kitchen table. If this story shocked you, smash that like button and comment below. Did Bernie Madoff deserve 150 years in prison? I read every single comment. And if you want to hear about the most brilliant robbery in human history next, that video is right there. I will see you in the next one.